what I've heard it put this way. Oh, Paul made an accommodation to Gentiles, particularly men, because asking them to be circumcised was like going to discourage the spread of the gospel. And so he just like, you know what?
Like he had the authority to get away, do away with circumcision.
So go ahead and so they're like, what Paul created was an accommodated kind of Gentile lowercase Judaism, like lowercase J, Jewishism. Right. And we're just going to take kind of like Reform Judaism today, like where it's like they have ham sandwiches and shrimp and all this stuff. And they still say that, yeah, we're Jews and we worship at temples and things like this. So is that it? Was it, I mean, obviously not. Obviously I'm describing that and we're saying, no, that's not the truth. Anyway, what do you think about all that?
I think this is like the ingredients of a really good kosher gumbo. There's so many elements that have to go into it to make it a gumbo. You can't just have, there's not just one, you don't just have like Tertullian sitting there one day going, oh, well, maybe circumcision is done away with. No. It's much more of nice. a whole smattering of ingredients that happen right at the right time to make it what it is. And I think that a lot of this goes back into the first century, which is one of the reasons that we see it so early. And so, first of all, you have...
I love the analogy. It's like the modern church is like a gumbo that's been cooking for 2,000 years.
Well, yeah, and we see all these different like, the kids are like, I don't like this in it. Give me a bowl before this is in it. And then, and then you have like the Eucharist. And then you have over here, like this person had this added. And so, but the point is that what you have
Gumbo Christianity. That's your next book, dude.
Gumbo Christianity.
Gumbo Christianity.
I think that in the beginning you have two main things that are happening. One is that the church is trying to say, we don't want to be seen by Rome or anyone else as the Jews of Israel who killed Christ. In other words,
that touches on the Jewish tax that you had mentioned.
Well, that's the other thing. The Fiscus Judaicus, right?
So it's not just one thing, but it seems like there's a perfect storm.
But I think Paul is the one who initially actually kicks this off. Now, this isn't anything against Paul and his theology, of course, but Paul writes in Acts. He keeps telling the Jews, well, you have his blood on your hands now because you are denying that he is the Messiah, right? So you are responsible. Like Israel is responsible, and you're part of that. And so instantaneously, the church starts to say, well, we're not. We accept Christ, so we need to be other. We have to be somewhat separate from the people who are denying Christ. So there is this schism instantaneously between those two groups. The Fiscus Judaicus comes along. Ultimately, actually, let's stay on that point for just a second. By the time you get to the Bar Kokhba revolt, now there's an even greater issue because you have the people who are trying to mount up against the enemies of Israel, right? Rome and whatnot. And they're saying, come join us to the Christians, right? Hey, you're with us, come join us. And what do the Christians have to say? We cannot fight with you under the banner of Bar Kokhba because you're saying he's the Messiah. And we are saying, no, he's not the Messiah. Jesus is the Messiah. Yeshua is the Messiah. So we can't fight with you under the banner of Bar Kokhba. And what did the followers of the Bar Kokhba revolt see that as? We are not part of Israel. We are not part of you. We are against Israel. And so this is like the final schism in between those two groups. But at the same time, you have in 70, 71, 72, you have the Fiscus Judaicus. And this is ultimately where the idea of rejecting the Torah comes in. We've talked about this so many times that the church does not reject the Torah. The church rejects 4 or 5 things from the Torah. And then this is the overarching thing that starts to guide the theology. And what those things are, circumcision, right? How did Rome know if you were a Jew? You were circumcised, you kept the Sabbath, you kept the festivals, you kept a kosher diet. Boom. Those are the 4 things. Okay, guess what? All of a sudden, you can start looking at Paul and say, well, look, Paul says in Romans, 5 that we don't have to be circumcised. Boom, there you go. We don't have to be circumcised. Well, Jesus says in Mark 7 we don't have to keep kosher laws. Boom, there you go. We don't have to keep kosher.
So these are like legal loophole, well, they're based on interpretation. They take tough texts, interpret them in a way that then functions as a legal or rational loophole in order to evade or maneuver tense, like social, political circumstances.
Let's not, look, if I know that I and my children are going to be boiled alive and I'm going to have to watch my kids be tortured, or I can interpret the scriptures so that they're not. Which one am I going to choose? Well, it sure looks like Paul's telling me I don't need to be circumcised here, right? So I'll just say, yeah, let's not circumcise, and I'm covered by the scriptures. So it's not just like people are like, well, you know what, screw God and his scriptures. No, it's not like that. There is this way that they're trying to actually live, and still be accepted by the scripture.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Tell us your thoughts on this subject by leaving a comment in the comment section. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and enable those notifications. And we'll see you in the next video.